So first of all, my name is Beth Eisensee, and I'm an Assistant Director at International Student and Scholar Services. And I will be your host for today. This is our second webinar, so let's go on to our next slide. This is our second webinar. Our first webinar was last Tuesday, and there is a recording of the first webinar on our website, and I will send an email with a recording of our first webinar to you after this webinar. So we have our webinar today, which will be we're going to be talking about the graduate and ISS resources, health and health insurance, and as well as housing and early arrival housing. Tomorrow we are kicking off our global Gopher events, and you are lovingly called a global Gopher. The Gopher is our University of Minnesota mascot, and so we want to recognize that we have Gophers who are part of our University of Minnesota community from all over the world. So those events will start tomorrow, and we highly encourage you to join. I'll be talking more about that in just a few minutes. And just a reminder that the Council of International Graduate Students is going to have a meet and greet on August 18th, and you'll receive more information about that in a follow-up email. So let's go ahead and go on to our next slide. So our agenda for today includes a welcome from our Associate Vice President and Dean of International Programs at Global Programs and Strategy Alliance, Meredith Mcquaid. And after Meredith welcomes all of you, we will be having panelists from the Graduate School, International Student Scholar Services, Boynton Health Services, Housing and Residential Life, and then we will end with 30 minutes of question and answers. And these will be the questions that you pre-submitted when you registered for this seminar. So, so I just wanted to let you know this is this information is specific to the University of Minnesota. This webinar is being recorded, and we will post it on our website as well. And with that, those are some of the basics of our time together, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce our Associate Vice President and Dean of International Programs, Meredith Mcquaid. Meredith?
Good morning, everyone. So nice to see so many people here on the call, and I want to join with my colleagues in welcoming all of you to the University of Minnesota. We are really delighted that you found us and that we found you, and that we're connecting wherever we are this morning, and that we'll have a lot of time together in the days and weeks and months ahead. You all already know that in order for us to be ready for the future, we need to be able to work across cultural, linguistic, and geographic boundaries. We need to create a culturally competent workforce that will meet the world's challenges head on. We know we have a lot of challenges. We need to meet the challenges with imagination and skills and creativity, because in this increasingly connected society, we continue to face challenges that one state or one country or one university can't solve alone. So global ready graduates are equipped to work with diverse individuals, organizations, and governments. And a global skill set, you already know this, is no longer one of those things that are nice, that is a nice extra on a resume, but it's absolutely crucial for success. So what you're going to learn with us, beginning with your first semester, will give you the skills you need to make a difference in your own way, locally, nationally, and even internationally. Now, we know that for many of you, your educational experience in the US began several years ago, perhaps as an undergraduate student. And for others, this is going to be your first US institution. And we're sure that you'll find you made the right choice in selecting the U of M for your advanced degree. The University of Minnesota is a recognized leader in international education. Our faculty do work all over the world, and our students come to us from around the world. Our students study abroad, they learn languages, and graduate ready for jobs here and all over the world. The university is ranked 30 in the top 30 among research institutions in the US for the number of international students here in the Twin Cities. We host almost 6,000 international students from more than 100 countries. We also have a very strong reputation in study abroad, ranking in the top 10 among research institutions for the numbers of students who study abroad on credit-bearing programs. So you're going to meet American students who have an interest in doing precisely what you're doing in a different location. As you already know, the University of Minnesota is located in a very diverse metropolitan area, and we also have many global local opportunities right here at home. So over the course of your next year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 8 years, you're going to have the chance to see and to taste and engage with the world. Our classrooms and our campus are enriched because of you, and we are really, really happy that you're going to be with us this fall. And of course, we are well informed about the additional challenges that you'll face this year. Maybe have already faced them in trying to get here. But we are here today to tell you from all of us that we want you here at the University of Minnesota. We're delighted you've selected us, and we will be happy to see you, whether it's in person this fall or on the screen through the fall semester, and then whenever you can get here in person. We're working on ways to help you to meet friends and to stay engaged long distance if that's necessary this fall. And we look forward to seeing you in Minnesota whenever you can get here. All of us know that the entire campus community benefits from the sharing of unique perspectives, cultures, and ideas that inspire innovation and ultimately lead to a greater competitive edge. So welcome to the university, and welcome to the world at the university. I'm going to pass it off to Nuru from the graduate school.
Thank you, Meredith. Hello, everyone. I'm Nuru Andrea Manalina, Director of Academic and Professional Development for the Graduate School. And some of you probably have already received emails from me. I want to begin by talking about the orientation for new or incoming graduate students. So you should have already received an email, most likely from Scott Lanyon, the Dean of the Graduate School, informing you about Gear 1, that's GEAR 1. And GEAR stands for Graduate Education Resource, and 1 is for your first year. And this is basically like a tutorial. It has different modules for you to navigate, to adjust, to get familiar with what to expect for your first year in graduate school. And if for whatever reason you didn't see it or you missed it, I will share the link to Gear 1 in a little bit, but it's very important for you to watch this video, go through the modules so that you can be prepared with several things about adjusting to graduate student life, finding resources, how to communicate to your advisor and faculty, and just navigating the whole first year. And then you will also on September 1st, so please look and anticipate for that email, again from Dean Lanyon, with a link to messages from the president, the provost, Dean Lanyon, and myself. I will be conducting it's about a 40-minute mini workshop, again, focusing on planning for your graduate journey. And so in that 40-minute presentation, I will cover a lot of things, resources for you, and especially on creating a plan to navigate your way through either 2 years if you're in a master's or 5 to 6 years if you're in a PhD. Next slide, please. You also should be familiar with Gear Plus, and Gear Plus is for years 2 through 5 or 6, depending on how long you're at the university, and it's a collection of online resources that my particular unit is putting together for all graduate students and postdocs. It focuses on a lot of areas, from transferable skills for the workplace, regardless of what career you're thinking to pursue, to writing your thesis and dissertation, and career exploration in terms of job search and networking. So on the next slide, these are the resources in the graduate school that I'd like you to be familiar in using. So if you just go to grad.umn.edu You'll see a lot of tabs on the top. My unit is Academic Career Support. And under that, you'll see a lot of opportunities, a lot of resources. I encourage you to get familiar with that. There's the link for Gear 1 and Gear Plus. Again, online support for you. So if you'll be studying online in your country, wherever you are in the world this fall, please make sure that you're familiar with Gear 1 and Gear Plus. It will answer a lot of your questions that you submitted today for this webinar. You should also be familiar with the Individual Development Plan. The University of Minnesota is really trying to get all graduate students to have one. And again, in that mini workshop that I will be presenting for you, that you'll have access to on September 1st, I will talk more about the Individual Development Plan, or IDP. You'll also see on our graduate school website ways to register for workshops and events. We collect all of the different workshops for graduate students and postdocs and put them on our website, so you don't have to look around different units and say what's available for graduate students. It's all in one place in the graduate school. And then finally, there's a way for you to register to get emails on upcoming workshops, events and opportunities, funding opportunities, for example. So I encourage you to go to the main Academic Career Support website and then scroll all the way to the bottom. And there you can register to be on our what we call opt-in listserv, so that you'll get regular updates on opportunities for graduate students. Okay, and I can talk more about this in the Q&A section. There are some particular questions, but for now, I'll pass it back to Beth.
Okay, thank you, Nuru. And again, we will send an email with these links if you didn't have a chance to either to take a picture or to write them down. So you will get this information in the email as well. So Nuru talked about resources that are available to all grad and professional students at the University of Minnesota. And I'm going to be talking about events and resources for international students, specifically at the University of Minnesota. So the first thing I want you to know about, you can go to the next slide, is you probably have received lots of emails about this, but again, we do have an international student preparation course through International Student Scholar Services. This is for all international students at the University of Minnesota. You can access this course through our website, which is isss.umn.edu, and then /new. That's where you'll find all the information for new international students. So you've probably received a lot of emails about this international student preparation course. This is required of all new international students that are going to be coming to campus in the fall, or entering the US in the fall. It is not required if you are not coming into the country, but there's a lot of great information in the International Student Preparation course, so we do encourage students to complete the course. And then the second thing if you go to the next slide, I also want to make sure that you know about the Global Gopher events. So these can be, you've also received emails about this, but our first event is tomorrow. It's our Global Gopher Kickoff, and that's where we bring all together all of the new international students and welcome them to the university. And what makes this program a little bit different is that this program includes a lot of our current international students who will be there to greet you. And we bring in lots of different offices and lots of different student voices to help support you as you transition to the University of Minnesota. So these are the 4 dates we have. So it's August 5th, August 20th, August 26th, and then we have our final event on September 2nd. So we hope that you will join us tomorrow. And again, you can go to our website to register for this. The third thing that I wanted to mention today is that if you are coming into the US and you are going to be taking classes, you do need to check in through the MySSS portal. Again, this is on our website, and it's isss.umn.edu /new. And if you're coming into campus for fall 2020, you will want to complete your ISS check-in after you arrive into the US. Or if you're coming from another institution, you're already in the US and you're continuing your studies, you also have to check in. And that's where we make sure that we have all the current information from you regarding your I-20, your visa, and so forth. And then if you're going to be starting in the spring, you would do that in the spring. So eventually, no matter what your plans for the future, you will interact with my ISSS. So those are the 3 things that I wanted to remind you of. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Dave Golden with Boynton Health Services.
Hi, thanks for joining us today. I just want to let you know a few things about Boynton. Boynton is your clinic. It's your place that you can go for healthcare. And a lot of services are available to you. We are open. So you are able to be seen face-to-face or via telehealth for a whole host of services. So we have things like regular doctor visits that you would think of. You would have available to you services for mental health is available too at Boynton. Services like a pharmacy, so you can get medications is available. We have nutrition services. If you're wondering about what should I be eating if I can't get the foods I'm used to, or we have something called physical therapy that people can get when they're injured. We have regular like laboratory, we have x-ray machines, we have, really we're a full clinic, and actually a very large clinic. We get about 120,000 visits per year, so it's busy, it's up to date. We're practicing all the safe guidelines with wearing masks and distancing, and all those things are in place. Yes, we're doing COVID testing, and I'll talk a little bit about that during the Q&A period. I know there's been a lot of talk about COVID. And also, it's very, very easy to use Boynton. You can call us on the phone, you can schedule an appointment online. Those will all work. If you have questions, you can call Boynton, and hopefully we can get you taken care of if you need it. So if you feel sick, if you need to be seen for anything at all, we want you to know that we are here and we're happy to see you. Oh, the other thing too that you should know is most services are already covered at Boynton through your insurance or the student service fees. There are some things you have to pay for, like we have a dental clinic. There are, if you want to buy eyeglasses, some things like that you have to pay for. But for the most part, if you're sick, you need to see a doctor, you need lab tests, you need an x-ray, you won't have to pay anything else for things like that. So I'll end there and I'll pass it off to Greg, who's in charge of our student insurance or student health benefits office.
Thanks, Dave. Yes, hello, I'm Greg Thurston. I'm the director of the Office of Student Health Benefits. Just want to remind you that the University of Minnesota does require students to have qualifying health insurance coverage, and this is needed to assure that you'll have access to appropriate medical care. Our office, the Office of Student Health Benefits, assists you in enrolling in the university-sponsored health insurance and helping with your questions about the coverage. The student health plan is a comprehensive medical plan and is available to international undergraduate and graduate students. Coverage for the academic year begins on August 24th. The plan, as Dave just mentioned, is really designed to give you the best value when you utilize services at Boynton Health. The cost for most services provided at Boynton Health are covered entirely by your insurance premium and the student service fee. As Dave said, there are a few items that, or services that could result in some out-of-pocket costs to use, such as prescriptions or medical equipment, dental, those types of things. Although we encourage you to use Boynton whenever possible, the plan does have or allow for coverage outside of Boynton. So if you find yourself in a situation where you need to use some other provider, you can go to other providers, in which case the plan generally pays 80% for covered services, meaning you would pay 20% of the cost of your covered services. You will be automatically enrolled in the student health plan, and the semester fee of $1,272 will be charged to your account unless you qualify for a waiver of the coverage and submit a health coverage declaration. Those of you who are graduate assistants, you have the opportunity to enroll in one of two graduate assistant health plans. And in this case, because your department makes a significant contribution towards the graduate assistant health plan premium, you'll pay less for coverage if you enroll in the graduate assistant health plan than if you enroll in the student health benefit plan. Now, regardless of which plan you end up enrolling in, you really should familiarize yourself with the health plan that you're going to be enrolled in. And on our website, which is listed here, shb.umn.edu, you can find information about the plans, and there is a very nice short coverage booklet. It's about 8 pages long that details out the coverage that's provided by each of the various benefit plans. I do want to have one final thought here on insurance. Some people have inquired regarding the potential costs associated with testing and, if necessary, treatment related to COVID-19. Do want to assure you that our plan has full coverage for those types of things. And at least for right now, our plan has temporarily modified participant out-of-pocket costs related to COVID-19. And so currently through September 30th, all the health plans that we offer are covering in-network COVID-19 testing and treatment at no cost to the participant. And then we'll review at the end of September whether we need to extend that no cost for testing and treatment beyond September 30th. And so at this time, I'll turn it over.
Greg, can I just ask you a quick question? I'm sorry to interrupt, but there was a great question in the chat, and it's the perfect time to talk about this, which is when we say a graduate assistantship, who does that include? Teaching assistantships?
Yeah, it would be people who have an appointment. So it's a graduate assistant, a teaching assistant, if you have an appointment where you're working for the university.
Thank you. So it's an appointment where you're working for the university. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Greg. And now I'll let you pass it off.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. My name is Manus Clark. I work in the Housing and Residential Life Office, so I'm excited to be with you today. I will go very fast to go a quick overview of international early arrival housing, and then if there's questions after we get to the Q&A session, I am happy to answer those questions. Over 20 years ago, the university created this international early arrival housing for students who were arriving from outside the U.S. as they acclimated and have temporary housing on campus. It is located in one of the university residence halls. So it's on campus with our staff and our desk and all the things that you would get for being on campus. If you can go to the next slide, please, that would be great. That's the website in order for students to register for temporary housing. It is $35 a night, but the nice thing is it's put on your student account in September, so you don't have to have cash up front. You can go and you can register and do that. When you register online, it will ask you the dates that you would like to stay. At this point, it will allow students to register up until August 25th, but we are currently working to extend that sometime in September because of what's happening in our world. So our hope is that if students need the temporary housing, they can do that. Many students use it as you come and you acclimate, whether you have already found housing or you are still searching for housing. It's a very good way for you to kind of transition in. There is, this year, there's been some questions, and if you go to the website, you will see it, that the CDC and the Minnesota Department of Health are saying that students who come from outside the United States, or anyone coming from outside the United States, should quarantine for 14 days. So we are aware of that, and the International Early Arrival Housing is providing that so the students can quarantine if need be for the 14 days with that. Once again, it's a great transition for as you come to campus. If you need that assistance, or if you need that temporary housing while you're looking for housing, while you're waiting for your apartment to open up, if the dates work out, it is great. If you send an email to housing@umn.edu, if you have any questions, our staff is happy to help you with that. And now I'm gonna turn it back over to Beth.
Great, thank you so much. So now we're going to go into our question and answer session. So just a few quick reminders. The first is that we're going to focus on the common questions that were pre-submitted so that we can, and if you have a question that's really a question that's very individual to your situation, we would ask that you contact our offices directly, and I will provide a contact page at the end of our session together where you can, we'll list the emails that are available. So there's two, and also you can submit questions, additional questions at this time. And if we get through the pre-submitted questions, we will then move on to the questions that you are submitting now. There's two ways you can submit questions. Our preferred way is through the chat feature. That's where you said hello to everyone this morning. And that way, or you can also submit through the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. That's if you want to submit questions anonymously. And then, so that would be another way to submit questions. But our preferred method is through the chat feature. I'm trying to think. So I think that's all. So I think we can go ahead and begin answering your pre-submitted questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Nuru. And the first question that we received was, what courses will be offered online and how do I register?
Great. Thank you, Beth. So if you had a chance to look at Gear 1, it talks about how to register for courses, but basically you need to go to onestop.umn.edu and go to academics. You hover over that and you go for class search resources. And the fastest way to find courses is to go to Schedule Builder. And I will make sure to put a link in instructions in the email that will follow this recording so that you can do that on your own and navigate that. How do you know if a course is in person or online? When you see the course that you're interested in, there will be a space that says room. If it's an in-person, you will actually have a room there that has been assigned to that course. If it's a remote course, it'll say remote, so that you know that this is not an in-person course. And so the other thing you can do is also talk to your graduate program coordinator, GPC. And as we mentioned in the first webinar last week, it's really important to know who your GPC is, because for a lot of the questions that you're submitting, it will really depend on your specific situation and your graduate program. So get to know who that person is and have a regular check-in or email conversation with that person. You want to know if your department, your program offers online courses specifically for international students who are abroad, because some of the time zones might be an issue. So when I spoke to the registrar's office about this, so some courses that are offered online in the United States are like 3 o'clock here, but in some parts of the world that might be midnight, for example. And so for some students that might be hard to join those courses live, but the registrar's office said that there are some programs who are offering courses to accommodate the global time zones. So you'd want to check with your graduate program to see if there are such courses offered specifically for international graduate students who have a difficulty joining the courses in the United States online because of the time difference. So again, I will send a link to make sure you know how to register for courses and to know which ones are in person or online.
Great, thank you, Nuru. Okay, so next, my first question. Greg, I'm going to ask you the next question. I think there's a few questions in the chat around just clarifying a few points around who is eligible for the grad assistant program. If you want to do any clarification at this time, please go ahead too. But the question is, can I get health insurance coverage before August 24th if I'm arriving before that time?
Sure. Just to clarify first for the graduate assistant plan. So if you are a graduate assistant, essentially, again, you have to have an appointment with the university. So if you're a graduate student but have no appointment to be working as a graduate assistant, then you would be on the student health benefit plan. But if you have an appointment where you're working for the university, then you could be eligible for the graduate assistant plan. And in general, people who are eligible for the graduate assistant plan would want to be enrolled in that plan over the student health plan because their department makes a significant contribution towards the premium for the graduate assistant plan. Now, for the other question in terms of August 24th for the student health benefit plan, when that coverage begins, yes, if you're going to be in the country prior to August 24th and maybe needing medical care before that, we can get you enrolled prior to August 24th. So just let our department know, and then we can adjust the start date of your insurance so that you have coverage from the first day that you come into the country.
Thank you, Greg. This next question is for Dave. Dave, what is the current situation in Minnesota regarding COVID?
So right now, when you come to Minnesota, you can expect to find most services are open. People are using masks and distancing now. That's a requirement that people are expected to wear masks whenever they're particularly indoors, but around other people. Restaurants are open, but limited seating or access to them, requiring reservations, although there's quite a few that have pickup, delivery, all that's available. Cases are somewhat stable in Minnesota right now. We're seeing a slight increase in total numbers of cases. The deaths related to COVID are down from what we were seeing months ago. Just so you know, kind of generally what the COVID rates are like. For international students or people that are actually international travelers, anyone traveling internationally, the expectation is that people quarantine for 14 days after they arrive. Now, with that, just understand that everybody knows that you need to get some things. You need to be able to get food. And can you go to a grocery store? Yes. I mean, sometimes you have to ride on public transportation. And yes, that is something you can still do. And we just ask that you mask and continue to socially distance. But then other times, if you don't need to be out, you need to stay in quarantine in your room at that time where you're at. You can share bathrooms as long as you wipe them down, like in the place where you're living. You should have your own room for sleeping for those 14 days. And if you get symptoms, you should come and get tested and make sure that you're then isolated, that you only come out if you get symptoms to get tested. Otherwise, you need to stay in place. So I think that covers it for some of the expectations around what it's like in Minnesota right now.
Thanks, Dave. So now we're going to switch over to housing, which is for Mannix. In case I do get a visa, which I will may be late, how am I supposed to find housing at such late notice?
Sure. Well, there's still housing available around the university in many different aspects. What I will do, I will put into the chat and ask Beth when she sends out the follow-up of our off-campus housing listing that the university provides. Those are landlords who are close to the university who list with the university who house students, and they in essence will say if they still have space. You can go to that link today. There's many of them. I was on a phone call with them last week, a Zoom call, that still have space available for students. So I do believe there's space available at this time if you were to go out there and look for housing, but I will make sure I put that on the link. Yes.
Great, thank you so much, Annex. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Eric. Eric, can you ask the first immigration question?
Sure, this is Eric Kretsch from International Student and Scholar Services. I'll be asking some immigration questions to one of the assistant directors in our office. The first one here for Teresa is, what new immigration regulation updates can you tell us about?
I'm Teresa Gangle-Gosson-Louis, and I'm the Assistant Director for Advising and Head of the F1 area. There have not been updates since the July 24th Student Exchange Visitor Program, or SEVP program guidance came out. For those of you that weren't on the last webinar, we did indicate that new students are eligible to apply for a visa to enter the US as long as they are not going to be registered 100% online. Students who are transferring from other US institutions who stayed in the US, they can take their courses partially online. And also the students who, this was a question that someone had submitted, students who have completed their OPT and plan to start a new program in the fall, they can study 100% online.
Thank you, Teresa. This next question is for Nuru. Nuru, for students deferring until 2021, what can they do for fall 2020?
Thank you, Beth. So my suggestion is to start thinking about your graduate program. Again, I will be talking more about the Individual Development Plan, IDP, in my mini workshop that you'll get a link to on September 1st. But it's really thinking about what is it that eventually I would like to do with my degree, whether it's a master's or a PhD. What are some skills that I'm lacking currently that I'd like to develop while in graduate school for the kind of career I want to pursue? So you want to start to really think about why you are interested in coming to Minnesota and pursuing a graduate degree. You might also want to start thinking about some readings in your field. I would connect again with your GPC, and I sent all of you a link to how to find your GPC in the chat. So click on that link and go to your graduate program. So you scroll down and click on your graduate program, and then scroll towards the bottom of the page that'll pop up, and then you will see the Director of Graduate Studies, the faculty who is working with you there, and then your graduate program coordinator. Their name and email will be there. But contact the either the Director of Graduate Studies or the graduate program coordinator and ask them what sorts of journals, what sorts of organizations you should be familiar with in your field, so you can start learning a little bit about the theories in your area, some of the best practices, what are people talking about. So you're beginning to sort of do a literature review of the major discussions in your field. You can begin to get familiar with that. If you're a little rusty or you've been removed from some of the courses that's required in your field, you might want to start being familiar again with maybe some statistical methods, some theory So start to get back into the whole academic life if you've been removed from that for whatever reason. But the idea is not to be stagnant and not prepare yourself, but to start thinking about the semester that you will be enrolling. And again, I will cover more of that in the mini workshop that I'll be delivering for you that you'll have access to on September 1st.
Thank you, Nuru. So this next question is for Greg. Can I waive the university okay, let me start again. Can I waive the university medical coverage if I am in the United States or if I'm staying in my home country?
Sure. So if you remember, in general, the university does require everybody to have qualifying health insurance. And this really is important because we want to make sure that everybody has access to any needed medical care. Obviously, a little bit unique, this situation now in that with COVID, there are people that are going to be remaining in their home country. And so if you're staying in your home country for the semester, you don't need to enroll in the student health plan. What happens procedurally is everybody who's listed as an international student automatically gets enrolled. We're going to get lists of people who are staying in their home country, and our office will disenroll, remove the enrollment of anybody that's remaining in their home country from the health plan, and will also remove the premium charged to your student account. This will be done automatically. It'll likely occur somewhere around the beginning of September, maybe the second week of September. And so if you're in your home country and the health insurance premium charge hasn't been removed from your account by, say, the middle of September, then you can contact the Office of Student Health Benefits and we'll get that corrected for you. Now, in terms of when you're in the United States, there are very limited situations in which international student who's in the United States can waive our coverage. Almost everybody ends up having to be on the coverage. In order to waive, you either have to have health insurance from an employer based in the United States, or there are several countries that have an approved agreement with the university where they'll cover medical expenses, or they agree to pay, you know, to indemnify, if you will, medical expenses incurred in the United States. Those countries, the only ones that have those types of agreements, are Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Oman, and Norway. So if you're from one of those particular countries, contact our office, and it may be that you'd be able to waive off the insurance using the coverage that your country provides for you.
Thank you, Greg. So our next question is for Dave. Dave, do students need to be quarantined after coming into the US?
Yes. So, and again, just as a reminder, like I said, you do need to be for 14 days, and that's for all international travelers. There are no requirements to be tested for COVID. But again, you should also just keep in mind that you will need to get things like groceries or pick up food, or you'll need some transportation, or if you get symptoms, you need to come to Boynton. And those things are certainly allowed. It's just we really want you to try and restrict as much as you can to your room for those first 14 days. Yes, and so that rule is still in place. That is from the CDC. That is not a university rule. That's from the Centers for Disease Control, and we just ask that people observe good practices when they're here.
Dave, I'm going to ask you one more question because there are so many questions around health and safety. So the next question is, what are the university's policies, and what will student life be during this COVID-19 pandemic?
So So the university policies are all really focused on, wearing a mask and socially distancing and trying to make that all work around COVID, and then providing, services. And so there will be some limitations in terms of, large group gatherings, things like that. So it's sort of part of what we're calling the new normal when we're all living with COVID, as we are, all around the world. We're still allowed to go out to places, but just with those restrictions, really, of wearing a mask and staying 6 feet apart.
Great. So now I'm going to move on to a question for Max. And I'm going to read this question, but I think Max might have to tell us what these acronyms mean, which is, can you tell us about CTC and CSCC housing and how to find a roommate? So I don't know if you could explain what those terms mean.
Sure. CTC and CSCC stand for Commonwealth Terrace Cooperative and Como Student Cooperative Community. They are family student housing communities that the university has on campus. They are done through a cooperative management where the students actually manage those. The university owns the housing, but the students hire a management company to manage those. Students who live in those, sometimes they have families, and sometimes it can also be a single graduate student. Each of them operate independently. Once again, I will stick in the chat just so you have the information on both the communities. Students can apply for those. At this point, both do have waiting lists. However, both have told me that they have also had many more cancellations than they've had in the past, as some students aren't able to come this semester who thought they would come. So if students are still interested in those communities, I think that's an opportunity for you to do that. Most of the time when graduate students, if they're a single graduate student, they can be there. They usually put them in one-person units. Other students who live in the communities usually have families or partners, and they have them there separately. The university, through our off-campus area in student affairs, has a roommate finder. So I will send that link as well. I have to do a little bit of research, but I'll put that out there. So I think it's a good opportunity because through that process, you could find a roommate and you may be able to find another graduate student. Since we have so many students on campus and you may want to be with another graduate student or somebody there, they can assist that way. It's not a perfect way, we always say to find it, but I think it's a good way to go in and put there. It's more of a Google search. You have to make sure that you use your university ID and password to get in, because we don't want non-university students getting into it. So at least you know that the people who are looking for roommates are university students as well. But I'll put both of those in the links, but happy to help in any way. You always, as I put in the last part, you can email housing. Housing also can answer your questions about the two cooperatives. We're happy to answer any questions you might have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mannix. Eric, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. The next question I have for Teresa is, for one-year graduate programs, what are the requirements for attaining OPT after graduation, and how might online classes affect this?
So if you take classes from home online in the fall, and your program is just 1 year in length, you're not going to be eligible for the OPT or the optional practical training. New students who enroll in online classes from abroad are not going to be in active F1 status in the fall. And so therefore you won't accrue the physical presence as it relates to the F1 status. To be eligible for the OPT, students must have been enrolled continuously for 1 academic year in active F1 status.
Thank you, Teresa. So now we lost my spot. Okay, here we go. So the next question is from Nuru. Nuru, the question is, can students still be funded if they are outside of the US? How about tuition payments?
Thank you, Beth. So the university is committed to continuing to support international grad students who are not able to join the university in the fall. You do need to, again, talk to your graduate program coordinator or director of graduate studies to make sure that there are specific rules and regulations that they're following, that the university is following, particular to your case, because a lot of things will depend on what country you're in and the tax laws and payment laws there. So you want to really make sure to connect with your GPC or DGS about your particular funding situation. If you have questions generally about being paid outside the United States, you can also email Human Resources, and I will put the email address in the chat, but it's basically GPS, like in Global Positioning System, GPS HR at umn.edu, GPS HR at umn.edu. And they're working on a frequent questions list about being able to get paid outside the US, but you can also just email them, and I will put that in the chat. But I would recommend that you check with your GPC to make sure that if you are in an assistantship or a fellowship, that they can continue to support you while you're abroad.
Thank you, Nuru. So this next question is for Greg. Greg, have additional medical facilities been added to the health insurance coverage due to COVID-19?
So just a reminder, obviously, that Boynton Health is, often your best and lowest cost option for obtaining medical services. And Boynton does have capacity for testing, and Boynton is not overwhelmed in its capacity right now. So Boynton's services are going to be sufficient. But the health insurance that we offer is through a carrier called Blue Cross, and Blue Cross is one of the largest insurance carriers in the United States. It has one of the largest networks of participating providers. So honestly, they have hundreds of thousands of participating providers in network and facilities. So there's not going to be an issue in terms of finding, or there's no reason to believe there'd be any issue in terms of finding a provider to be able to treat you.
Thank you, Greg. This next question is for Dave. Dave, the question is, can I get a test so that I can return to my home country? But I think there's also just quite a few questions that are coming up in the chat around what do I need to do in order to get a test? Like, can I just decide after, or can I, after 4 days of being in the US, can I get a test? What circumstances can a person get a COVID test?
It's pretty specific. So I'm glad you asked that question. So these people can get tested. People that have symptoms. So if you're symptomatic, you can get a test. 2, if you've been exposed to someone that has COVID symptoms, or they've been diagnosed with COVID, you can get a test. 3, if you need a test to return to your home country, you can get a test. So those conditions are are the people that we're testing right now. That might change as demand increases for testing, or it might expand if we're able to, meet the demand that's out there or exceed it. But these are the guidelines, again, from our state health department as far as our top priorities for testing.
Thanks, Dave. So the next question is
Sorry,
from Matt.
I didn't ask the last part of your question. My apologies.
Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, how to get the test. You can call Boynton and schedule a test. And in September, you'll be able to schedule a test online. So my apologies. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that.
Thanks, Dave. Sorry, I'm just so focused on the questions. So the next question is from Annex. Will there be temporary housing available for students who are going to join in the spring?
Historically, we don't offer temporary housing in the spring. I say that but this has not been a very historical year. So at this time, I can't say we will have temporary housing in the spring. If at all possible and it's available, we will try to provide that service. The reason we have not provided in the spring is because the students who live in on-campus housing that we use for temporary housing have their belongings in there in the spring. At the beginning of the fall semester, they have not moved in yet when we use that. So we will still evaluate that. If at all possible, we will make sure that we communicate through various channels, both through ISS as well as the graduate school, just to make sure our partners there can get information out if we're able to have that, or if we're not able to provide that service for the spring. Like I said, at this point, it will maybe not happen, but if we can make it happen, we will definitely try our best to try to do that.
Thanks, Anne. Do you want to go ahead, Eric?
Sure, Beth. Got another question for Teresa here. If I choose to study remotely in the fall 2020 semester, can I apply for a US visa?
If you're going to study remotely in the fall and you plan to begin your classes on campus in spring, you can make the visa appointment using that same SEVIS ID number that's on your initial I-20. But you will need to contact graduate admissions to request an updated I-20 for spring semester that you will then take with you when you actually go to the visa appointment. So you kind of want to think about the timing a little bit. But yes, you can certainly try to get a visa appointment, for example, in October, and you can use that SEVIS ID number on the initial I-20 you already received.
Good. I just want to recognize that it's 9 o'clock. We discussed beforehand whether or not we could continue to ask questions past 9 o'clock, and most of the panelists were able to stay on. So we'll continue asking questions. We have quite a few pre-submitted questions that we're still trying to get through. So we'll go ahead and keep working on those. So if you can stay with us, we're going to keep going with the questions. So the next question is for Nuru. Nuru, can you talk a little bit about how graduate students can connect with or network with other graduate students?
Sure, thank you, Beth. So if you're going to be mostly online for the fall, I would make sure to be engaged in your email, because a lot of graduate student groups will be communicating through that. And so if you are not in the habit of looking at your University of Minnesota email account, the official one that was submitted through the university, umn.edu, please make sure to do that and check it often. That's the primary email that will be used to communicate with you. But you should be familiar with the Council of International Graduate Students, for example, SIGS. And Beth had talked about an event that's coming up on August 18th, the virtual meet and greet. You should also be familiar with the Council of Graduate Students, COGS. That's a very popular group. That is the organization that represents the entire graduate student body at the University of Minnesota. So look for emails for online events and activities. Beth just talked about the Global Gopher events through ISS, and check your emails often. Again, your umn.edu email. That's how people at the university will be connecting with you.
Great. I think that's a really good point, Nuru, about checking your email. When you get an email, if you think to yourself, is this really for me? The answer is yes. I mean, we're all engaging in a new way of being all online. And so it's going to be harder to connect. And when you get an email, everyone across the university is looking for ways to connect with other people. And so yes, that email is for you. And yes, you should join. So the next question we have is for Greg. If my teaching assistant, research assistant, fellowship, whatever it might be, will be delayed, will the health insurance cover entire semester?
So you're only eligible for the graduate assistant health plan when your appointment actually begins. And so, you know, if it is delayed, you wouldn't be eligible for the graduate assistant plan. However, you can be on the student health benefit plan until your appointment begins. So you'll still have insurance coverage.
Good. Thank you. Dave, this next one is for you. Are there any procedures we should know about with international flights and arrival? Anything with immigration, immunization requirements? And is it necessary to get tested for COVID after international travel?
So no, it's not necessary to get tested after international travel. There is a immunization requirement not related to COVID at all for everybody in post-secondary or in college in the state of Minnesota. And that information can also be found on the Boynton website, but that needs to be completed by the time you register for next semester. And so around November, but it's nice to get it done as soon as possible. It's 2 doses of vaccine for measles and mumps and rubella, and a diphtheria tetanus within the last 10 years are the requirements. And Boynton does provide those immunizations as well if you need them.
Thanks, Dave. So Mannix, this one is for you, which is, I would really like to know the pros and cons of housing on campus as well as off campus. So can you talk a little bit about what the pros and cons are?
Sure. Well, and it's sometimes for the Twin Cities campus, I would say for a graduate student, the pros, if you're living in one of the co-ops, I believe it's a great place because I think you're with people who are mostly graduate students. Many have families. So I think it's a nice through there. And I think for the Twin Cities market, the rates are very competitive and sometimes even a little bit below market. So I think it's good because of how the cooperative measures. If you choose to live in the university residence halls or apartments, you're living with mostly undergraduate students, and we're heavily undergraduate. So I think that could be a con depending on how some people do it, or if you're recently graduated, it may be closer. So I think that would be a little bit different. If you live off campus, I think that's where the majority, I would say, of the graduate students that don't live in the cooperatives would live. So I think you would be living where most of the people live. In our current environment, an on-campus environment that's a traditional residence hall, not the cooperatives, if something were to happen in the institution, something didn't go through, last spring, we did credit students back the money if they needed to leave and go home. There's some things that the institution do that way. So I think it's really an individualized kind of decision to make. Many of our graduate students who live off campus, I think if you can get in one of the cooperatives, that's a great spot. We clearly will have space in our apartments and on-campus community. We still have 100 graduate students that live in traditional residence halls and apartments. Most of them are in our apartment facilities to do that. But I mean, there's so many of the landlords also around campus are used to housing students, whether they're the larger landlords or they're the small individual landlords who've been housing students around our campus for 15, 20 years or more. They are really dedicated to housing students, and that's really what they do. So I think I don't think there's a bad way to go. I would think if you look at an off-campus listing service, if somebody lists there, that means they're in good standing, usually with the University Student Legal Services. For the most part, if they've had any complaints against them, they've resolved those complaints. So that's always a good way to know too. If they don't list there, that may mean you should do a little bit more research to make sure that person's a good landlord, because that's really what it's about when you're coming over and you're trying to figure out what's a good spot for you. Thanks.
Thanks, Mannix. Eric, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, the next immigration question is, could I arrive after the semester starts? due to delays in visa processing? And do we need ISS check-in or something of that kind?
If you're not able to obtain your visa by the start of fall semester or shortly after that, the university recommends taking your courses from home online. If you're going to be arriving a little bit late, that's going to be fine, but mid-semester, it's really not a good idea. Discuss, though, your plans with your department and with graduate admissions if you're not going to arrive at the start of the semester. If you arrive after the start of the semester, you'll need to get an updated I-20. And then also, whenever you do arrive on campus, you will need to complete the ISSS check-in.
I'm gonna give just I'm gonna put you on the spot, which is this question about arriving late. Can you say a little bit about who students should be? You know, Teresa said that talking to the grad admissions, but I'm thinking about the graduate programs as far as what should students do with the graduate programs around arriving late.
Yeah, I think the best thing is to really check. And I know this answer is always the same, but to really check with your graduate program coordinator. Some departments do have a limit of when they need to know and when students need to arrive. So I would definitely check with each of your graduate programs to make sure that you're in line with their expectation.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm just trying to look through the questions and see where we're at. I wanted to ask Dave, I don't know if you covered this, Dave, but can you say a little bit more of what students should do if they do feel sick or they have they feel like they may have COVID-related symptoms? What do you want students to do in those situations?
Call Boynton and isolate, and we can get you scheduled for a test. So those things will need to happen right away.
Great, and we'll again put that at the end of the of our session today, the contact information. Again, so this question is for Mannix. If I don't have a housing option when I get to Minnesota, is there a place that I can make my quarantine? I think you covered this a little at the beginning, but if you just want to reiterate what the quarantine options are.
Sure. At this point, we still have international early arrival housing. So I would recommend you go to that site that we listed in the PowerPoint, best that you would send back out and make a reservation for there. We still plan on housing students there. And then when you get here, that still will you can do your quarantine housing at that point. But definitely go on that site. It's kind of first come, first serve, and put in your information and let us know when you plan on coming, and we will do our best to accommodate you. The staff will get back to you usually within 3 days. Now we are trying to respond even 3 days or sooner to respond fast to approve those. So definitely make sure you do that.
Good. I think Erica, do you want to go ahead and finish asking the immigration questions, and I'll just check in on the other areas while you're doing that.
Sure. I think Teresa has left. She had to go to another meeting, so I'll ask the questions and I'll do my best to answer the questions as well. The next one is, the normal visa service hasn't been open in my country yet. What should I do? Well, our department recommends that you check embassy and consulate websites frequently to see if and when visa appointments might be available. And if you don't find an appointment time for your preferred location, we recommend that you check other US consulates near where you're located. You can also inquire perhaps about applying for an emergency visa at a US consulate or embassy. And some consulates and embassies will consider these requests for students when the start date on a student's I-20 is within 30 days or so. So you want me to keep on going, Beth?
go ahead.
Yeah. What can ISSS do to help international students get their visas? Well, ISSS and University of Minnesota graduate admissions, we've been adding remarks to a student's I-20 indicating that the University of Minnesota will provide hybrid courses. So kind of a combination of in-person and online courses. And that students will not be enrolled in 100% online courses. And at one point, these remarks were required by the US government. And we've been told that even though it's no longer a requirement, for some reason, US embassies are still requiring these sorts of statements on an I-20. Now, some schools wrote letters on behalf of, or for their students to US consulates and embassies, but frankly, we've heard that letters aren't always accepted. And so we've continued to add these remarks on the students' I-20, and we found that that seems to be what works the best. But when it comes down to it, unfortunately, there isn't really much that ISSS or any university, including the University of Minnesota, can do to help students secure a student visa. If you do experience a visa denial, please contact ISSS, and we'll get you. We'll get an ISSS advisor for you to communicate with, and then we'll try to get you the best help possible. I've got one more question here, Beth. Should I go ahead with that one?
Yes.
So getting to campus depends on the embassy being open and issuing visas. How long can I study online? And so the guidance we have from the US government at this point, specifically student and exchange visitor programs, their guidance is currently only for the fall 2020 semester. And if the pandemic continues, I expect the guidance could be extended to the spring semester, or perhaps new guidance will be issued. So all we can speak to at this point is just your ability to study online from home during the fall semester, and then we'll have to see what happens with future guidance. That's it for right now, Beth.
Great. Thank you so much. So I think that concludes our time together today. And of course, you probably have a many additional questions specific to your situation, and we do encourage you to reach out to all of our offices. I think, as Nur has said numerous times, your graduate program coordinator is really a great person to start with when asking questions, and they can get you to the right places. I will go ahead and put up the contacts for our different departments, and we are expecting that you'll ask questions, and we're there to support you. So I think we're going to go ahead and close it for today. Thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you tomorrow at the Global Gopher a welcome and kickoff. So hopefully we'll see you tomorrow, and thank you so much. We'll be sending out an email with, again, all the links that we've talked about and the context of the offices we've discussed as well. And that usually the recording takes at least a day or two to process and get uploaded, and then we'll send out the email. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a wonderful day, night, sleep, whatever is next in your day. Thank you.